Mike Myers used to say to us, who, what, and where? What's at stake here? Who are these characters? Where are they? And he said, why have the gods of improv given us this moment? So, first of all, I would say to that person, think of yourself as high status. The other day, I did a workshop on Zoom and imposter syndrome, and I said, hang on a minute, you're experts in something, because they were saying, I can't speak up. You're experts in something. It turns out this woman was an expert in palliative care. Absolutely profound skill, sensibility. But when I talk to people who they do the numbers, they do the commercial, you are an expert. They're listening to you. So remember, rewrite the script a little bit. You are an expert. That's why you deserve to be at that table. So first of all, remember that internally.
Hey, this is William Tincup and Ryan Leary. You are listening and hopefully watching the You Should Know podcast. We've got Neil on today, and we're going to be talking about the intersection between improv and business. And we might spend a whole lot of time on improv. We don't know. Neil's got some tricks up his sleeve.
He does.
In pre-show, we've talked a lot about football and Manchester United, so kind of made my day, actually. So, Neil, would you do us a favor, the audience a favor, and introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Neil Mullarkey. That's my real name.
So Ryan asked that question.
I asked that question.
I was
Neil,
born
before.
with that name. People think I made it up because I'm from comedy.
Oh, that's such malarkey.
It's my real name. Sadly, I don't get a royalty check every time somebody uses that phrase. But I did end up in comedy. I always wanted to be a comedy writer performer. And then I met a man called Mike Myers. In the 1980s, he was living in London. And he said, do you know there's this thing called improv? We did a double act called Mullarkey and Myers. We formed the Comedy Store Players, who are about to celebrate our 39th anniversary. We're in the Guinness World of Records. So Mike left. He went back to Canada, but we still kept in touch. So I'm in a couple of his Austin Powers movies. And the last 25 years, I've been teaching improv to people in organizations and business, and leadership skill, teamwork, creativity, collaboration. And the crossover has been much broader than I expected. So I still do the Comedy Store Players on a Sunday. I'm in a couple of his Austin Powers movies, as I say, and I've written a book called In the Moment, which kind of brings together what I've learned and stolen from the participants who've been in my workshops over the last 24 years or so. And I'm delighted to be here. Who wouldn't want to be with William and Ryan?
Yeah. So, Neil, you'll love this. 100 years ago, I hired a improv group in Fort Worth we were doing a sales kickoff. And I didn't let any of the salespeople know it, one of those bits. So, we went to their shop, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, where are we going? I said, don't worry about it. We're just going to go. We get in. It's a 4-hour workshop, and it was the best workshop I've ever been a part of, because all the salespeople, it gave them tools in conversation, the yes and. It gave them listening skills. It gave them all this stuff without, like a traditional training kind of thing. It's like they would just pull two guys up on the stage, like, all right, you, come on, let's get up here. All right, and it was fun.
How do you teach improv, though?
You just do exactly that. You say the basic skill is listening. It's not about standing up, being funny, holding forth. It's about listening to what she said, what's he saying, and you treat what the other person says as an offer. You're on stage. You say to the audience, give us a location, hospital, and you say, okay, I'll be a doctor, you be a nurse, let's go. You don't worry too much. And actually, the training, and there is quite a lot of training, actually.
Yeah.
It's different from, hey, let's just make stuff up, because that gets messy, waffly. People try and do it on their own. This is a highly disciplined mindset, which actually you quieten your inner voice, which is saying, I've got to get it right. I've got to plan ahead. You go, let's trust the gods of improv, because if I really work with what she's saying and she's going to do the same as me, then we will co-create something beautiful. You treat what the other person says as an offer. You mentioned yes, and yes, I hear what you say, and let me build on your idea.
Right.
This is the central ethos, which is completely opposite perhaps to what people think, which is got to do improv, got to think of funny stuff, got to stand and tell jokes. No, you don't do jokes. You try to tell story. You try to honor the other person's offer. In fact, the ethos boils down to, how do I make my colleague look good? How do I build on what they've said? Which is so applicable. Leadership, teamwork, sales, for goodness sake. You've got to listen to your client. Instead of going, I've got my 5 questions. What's my script? What's my sales canal? You go, what does she want? What's she saying? I can shoot the breeze and then discover what she doesn't like, what she does like. Maybe how she might phrase what she's thinking about. All right, let's use that. And it's very simple, actually, but takes a lot of time to get you. People talk about the mindset, but it's kind of a body set as well. It's kind of, oh, right, that's that voice which is telling me, got to think ahead, got to get it right. No, just listen. Listen, I call it listening with intent, intentive listening, so focused on what the other person's saying that you're thinking, how can I build on that, make their idea work? And it's much more applicable than I could even have imagined 25 years ago.
Well, it's so counter to, in the U.S., it's so counter to the way that we're brought up to think about the next thing. Is we're taught, like we're talking right now, we're thinking about the next question we should ask you, or the next question after that.
Well, I was until he said all of that. Then I'm like, I can't ask my question because he's just going to judge me and not. He's going to judge me. Going to be cool.
No, but that's the joy of it. Actually, most exams, we take exams in high school, and you have to sit. You have learned stuff. You sit there. You write your thing. You're not allowed to copy, borrow, share. Real life is all about collaborating. You can't get buy-in without listening to other people. Nothing will actually move forward unless you persuade others. There'll be others with different skills, preferences, experience. Bring them in, plagiarize, borrow their idea, riff off each other. That's how things get done in the real world. It's not I sit there on my own. Occasionally there are moments, but actually a very creative moment is, and I mentioned in my book, a little test they did, which is 3 groups. One group did it all on their own. One group did it all together all the time. And one group did it, some stuff on their own, go and check in with the group, go back. And that's pretty effective. Most of life is a bit of that. But how do you learn to do the stuff, the brainstorm, let's all be in a meeting together, let's throw out ideas, without the loud voice dominating, without the person at the back going, hang on, we're just throwing out ideas, none of which will work. I don't want to shout. I don't want to play this alpha game. I want to be able to reflect and listen. And actually, you'll find that a lot of improv people are quite quiet and reflective because actually listening is our main skill. And we'd love to make somebody else run with the ball. Give them a question, give them an offer. Off they go, great. And we're all playing that. We're all playing the team player, which means we all look great. That's the joy of being an individual in an improv team, is you can all look great and the team can look great.
I love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah. So William, you mentioned the yes and, which I think, the world should know this, right? I would assume most people know this, but Neil, my question here is, and I think it's pretty obvious based on everything you just said, how do we use that in business or in the work environment? Not necessarily just sales. That's obvious, but let's talk about that. How do we bring yes and into the workplace?
Well, just in case people don't know what we're talking about, and they may well do actually, but improv, yes and is our watchword. We actually have a verb. I'm yes-anding you. Yes. I'm consciously building on your idea. Yeah. And Pixar pictures, a lot of them come from improv background. They call it plussing. You can't critique an idea unless you have a positive way to move things forward. And even more profoundly, cool. Isn't that great? Even more
profoundly, is awesome.
You have to say, well, this is where we are. This is where we start. So many times conversations get stuck with, I wish we weren't here. Or actually, I don't think we're there. Why do you think we're there? This is where we are. This is the problem. This is the moment. This is the opportunity. Let's recognize the facts, the reality of where we are. The yes and says, yes, I hear what you say, and I move things forward. And I accept your offer. Now, of course, people say, I don't want to say yes and. What if my colleague or customer is wrong? You can still say yes and without saying yes and. In fact, I say to people, we actually never say yes and on stage. You wouldn't say it in real life because people might punch you. It sounds weird. But I can do no but. I can do, that's interesting, let's move forward. Because we all know when somebody is working with what we're saying. In fact, I worked with one of the top management consultancies in the world who said, this is a great trick. I say yes and when I mean yes but. Yes, and that'll never work. Yes, and we tried it last year. Yes, and it's too expensive. Yes, and I don't like you. So just saying the words yes and are not the thing. That's why I go back to offers. And I have a 5-letter acronym. It was about listen to offers. Accept the offers. And that doesn't mean agreeing.
Right.
And I always say to people, does anyone have friends? And do you agree with it? No, but you accept. They have different points of view. So yes and as an approach to life, which is accepting reality, seeing how we can use that to move forward. That's all it is. The yes is accept what's there, be attentive, listen. Then the and is contribute to that. So if you've ever read Bossy Pants, by Tina Fey? So she has 2 pages on yes and. She says, why wouldn't you accept where we are or say yes to somebody's option, idea, perspective, feelings? And the and means to contribute to it. It's accepting whilst also being proactive. And that's what people sometimes forget, that listening is yes and. It's not just, and I could be thinking about Tinder, whatever, looking out the window. It's accepting and actually, how do we know if somebody's listened?
Yeah.
By what they say. So this I teach on leadership courses, creativity courses, because as a leader, if you're not yes-anding your team members, you're yes-butting them, you're not listening, and at certain stage, they'll stop coming to you with their ideas. Have you heard the phrase or the word hippo in terms of Silicon Valley? Hippo is highest income person's opinion. Highest income person's opinion. That's not the only voice you want to hear in a meeting. You want to hear the newbie. You want to hear the outlier. You want to use the moment to get different voices, different perspectives. If it's just that person who's seen it all before, you're going to miss some possibilities. People will feel a little bit cowed. Oh, I better listen to the boss's voice. On the other hand, working at Google recently, and the guy was talking about servant leadership. Do you know servant leadership? Yeah. And he was saying, actually, sometimes I've got to do more and than yes, if you know what I mean. I've got to drive the story a bit more. And they say to me, actually, just tell us what to do. But if you're doing that all the time, you're not going to get ideas. If you're just saying, hey, guys, yes, whatever you want, feel fine. So that's why the yes and is almost one notion.
So you mentioned trust early, and I'd like to go back to it real quick because it seems to me, and again, this is leadership, this is improv as well. It's when you're accepting of that and you've taken it, there's a trust, there's a bond that's built between the sender and receiver of those things. And so how do you teach?
I just make them play the game.
Got it.
And to use the arena which I'm most familiar is on stage. I can meet somebody for the first time on stage, and I know within 10 seconds if I can trust them, because their body, their voice, their eyes, their ears are listening. They look like they're ready for my offer. They're going to throw me a great offer. They're going to take my offer and just pack it up beautifully and lay it on the line for me. Beautiful stuff. And teaching trust, I think people think I've got to go I've got to go camping with you for 3 weeks, find out about your terrible maternal.
I'm going to fall back. You catch me.
Yeah, exactly. All stuff.
Yeah, trust falls and all that.
Trust doesn't have to be so deep. It can be, do I trust your spreadsheet? Do I trust you'll deliver that on Tuesday because you said you will? We don't have to know so much about each other. And so that's where the onstage thing, I think, is a useful reference, because for the purposes of the project, do I trust you to deliver this thing? I may know you and not even like you, but trust. So trust sounds very deep. And there's, do you know about the trust equation?
Yes.
Yeah, there's reliability and connection stuff. So you can create trust by that empathetic rapport, personal stuff, but also you can trust it with more, dare I say, left-brainy stuff. He always comes in. She's always there on time. Wow, she's delivered that proposal. Great. But actually, the deeper thing maybe is assume trust. That's what we do on the improv stage. I don't need to know anything about you to start a scene with you. And as you just said, sender and receiver. By showing you trust, you create trust. And I think that's the lesson here.
Just a quick follow-up. Is the building block of trust, or one of the building blocks of trust, is that listening?
Yeah.
You can't have one without the other? Or
I
it's
don't think
harder
so.
to
I mean,
have?
the thing is, we do trust people we've never met.
100%.
We see them on TV, and we may be wrong in that, and that's actually one of those things that Saatchi and Saatchi, the advertising agency, they had love marks, which is how much you trust the brand. This financial services firm, what if they ran a creche, a nursery, kindergarten? Would you send your children there? And that was a way of trust, calibration. That may be different from individuals working in a team, but listening, we love somebody who listens to us. We don't even mind if they disagree, if they are transparently accepting our point of view. And that's why I always start with, do you have friends? Do you agree with them on that? No, we don't agree. But are you willing to have your mind changed? Are you interested in changing their mind? So I can only really talk about sometimes the opposite of this. Somebody working in the public sector once said to me, I go to meetings, I say my bit, I don't listen, I just sit there like a vegetable for the next hour. Or my only point in a meeting is to make sure he doesn't get his point. But that's not trust.
No.
And we know that we can, sometimes trust is forged in the fire of disagreement. And the number of times somebody said in insurance to me, I didn't know this person well, we had a disagreement, we had a negotiation, and we got through it. We found a working model. I know nothing about their home life, but we trust each other. So trust is an oft used word, but I think we kind of know when it's there and we know when it isn't there.
We know the feeling of trust, and we know the situations that we can use. I mean, there's situational trust. I mean, I've got a lot of I don't know if that's a real thing, but like you're saying, I don't need to know somebody, but I know if they're going to get something done, I can trust them in that situation for that scenario, whatever I'm in. One of the trends that I've heard over what have we done, 30, 35 shows or something like that at this point. One of the trends is, especially on the women's side, is they get into the meeting, they get into the room, and then they don't say something.
They just don't feel like they're going to be listened to.
They're not going to be listened to. The leader of the meeting or the leadership in the room hasn't built that trust or that feeling of a safe space to actually give your opinion or idea. Where does this play into that? Because I feel like this is an ideal situation for this.
That's brilliant. And a lot of people I work with, individual, as well as do my workshops and keynotes, I do individual coaching. Often I'm great in one-on-ones, I'm great with my peers, then I step up and I'm scared. And you're right, there's a push and pull here.
Yeah.
It's how do leaders make that environment work? If I'm working with an individual, I can't tell their boss, though I sometimes can. But I'm saying to that, first of all, some tricks are, because actually in improv, we have, shall we say, some guide rails. A scene works with status. So there's a high status character, there's a low status character, and the joy comes, like in Shakespeare, when the low status character turns out to be wiser, cannier than the high status character. You have the status switch. So we always try and establish some status. Mike Myers used to say to us, who, what, and where? What's at stake here? Who are these characters? Where are they? But and he said, why have the gods of improv given us this moment? So first of all, I would say to that person, think of yourself as high status. The other day, I did a workshop on Zoom and imposter syndrome. And I said, hang on a minute, you're experts in something. Because they were saying, I can't speak up. You're experts in something. It turns out this woman was an expert in palliative care. Absolutely profound skill, sensibility. But when I talk to people who they do the numbers, they do the commercial, you are an expert. They're listening to you. So remember, rewrite the script a little bit. You are an expert. That's why you deserve to be at that table. So first of all, remember that internally. Even stuff like, think of your voice. And is your voice saying, I need to be listened to? Because we're very dumb human beings. If somebody's going, this is just me, I don't know how things are, we can't help but go, oh, right, we shouldn't listen to them. It's not fair, it's not right. And great leaders will make sure that person's voice is brought in. And another thing I'd say in my book is actually, especially remote, make your meetings not facilitated by the boss. Maybe he can step back, it's somebody else to facilitate. So I think it's really overlooked the number of times when somebody really good doesn't step up, isn't able to step because of whatever they're doing or was being done around them, to say what they have with this. So one of the hippo thing is one thing, but just notice the unconscious stuff that's going, and we know it. We men, we play a game. We unconsciously and consciously play the game. And I say to women, first of all, notice the game. You don't have to play that game. You don't have to play that game, but play a game which is I can be trusted. And I trust myself. I'm not going to use apologetic language.
Right.
I'm going to take my time, and I can create status not by being aggressive, but by being assertive. So Amy Cuddy, who talked about the Superwoman pose, for example, she talks not just about physical space, but temporal space. And I say, look at Barack Obama. He's so slow. He takes his time. You don't want to interrupt this man because he has so much you want to hear. Things like that, just technical stuff, which is how we establish character. The slow person, the fast person, I'm speaking a lot, you don't trust me, I'm nervous. And of course, the number of times we sabotage ourselves without even realizing it. And all I say to people is, and this is an improv word, choices. Choice. You have a choice to play a high status character, low status character, to accept the cheese, or to be suspicious of the cheese. But the cheese is the offer, if I can be a bit self-indulgent. But it's the idea being that the number of people who say, well, this is who I am. I say, well, yeah, but are you the same when you were 15? Are you the same at a Christmas party? Are you the same with your nephew, your grandmother at the neighborhood barbecue? You're a different person. You're actually playing a role. Improv, we have to create characters in no time. High status, low status, lascivious, something's at stake. Oh, I love her. Oh, I hate her. I'm scared of it. Just moments. And that's why actors find improv quite hard, by the way.
Right.
Because they have a script. They've learned the script.
Right.
They've thought about the character. And I don't denigrate their art. I'm not one. But in improv, you go, I'm angry. Don't know why. Oh, I don't know, because the cheese makes me angry. You find an external reason. So it's quite different. So in my book, I do talk about the improv moments, listening, adapting, flexible, and the moments of script. So you should learn your presentation. You should know your words. You should rehearse so your presentation makes its point and finishes on time and has enough light and shade and stories and facts and metaphor. In improv, you shouldn't go with a script. But the problem we have sometimes is bringing a script to what should be an improv moment and what should be a scripted, prepared, structured moment. Oh, we're kind of winging it and not quite doing the best.
What have you run into with leaders around perfection?
Transformational insight of improv is, I'm not perfect. No improv scene is ever perfect.
Right.
There are better choices you could have made in hindsight. But actually, we relish the time when somebody fell, didn't know what to say and said something weird. And then because everyone else built it up, that weird choice became the best. And it's not que sera, sera. It's we're going to make the best of where we are. This is the plussing of Pixar. Let's start where we are. We're not perfect. And any artiste will tell you, oh, I can't watch my film. I can't look at my paintings. Even William, I'm sure, some of those pictures behind you.
He says it all the time.
Yeah.
He says, ask him how many podcasts he's listened to that we've recorded together out of like 400.
Every creator knows, I wish I could have done that a bit better. And that's almost the journey I have with leaders is when you get them doing an improv exercise, and there's great leadership models, by the way, if I can just mention words like complexity and emergence, and much of leadership is simply dealing with imperfection, navigating uncertainty. And that's the lesson in a way is, right, nothing's going to be perfect. I'm not going to I won't know the answer to everything. We don't have a script. We can't know what's going to happen. Let's bumble through. I read an article once, Harvard Business Review, about leadership is the best state of mind for a leader is humble confidence. Confidence the way to get through. Humble, we can't know everything. And that's it. We're never going to be right. And that's why humor is a big deal. And improv and humor, of course, cousins. Let's laugh at ourselves, our mistakes, our past. Let's look at it from a weirdly different perspective, make ourselves smile. But you're absolutely right. When you get over the hump of feeling you've got to be perfect, wow, you can do so much more. And when I discovered VUCA, for example, do you know VUCA?
I do not.
The world is, I think it was named by the American military, hasn't quite lifted off in the way that things like disruption and purpose and authentic have done. But VUCA, the world is volatile. The world is uncertain. The world is complex. The world is ambiguous. As soon as you go, yeah, that's right. So why would I be thinking I've got to be perfect?
It's almost arrogant to think that way.
Yeah, exactly. And leaders go, oh, right. So my job isn't always to know the answer. And this is a lovely graphic I have of borrowed from an academic here in the UK about uncertainty. There are moments of uncertainty. There are moments of certainty. There are moments of disagreement. But actually, sometimes a bit of uncertainty, a bit of disagreement could be helpful, because in that moment, if it's held well, it can be creative. New ideas come. If it's too uncertain, too uncollaborative, and we all disagree, it's chaos. But if everyone agrees on everything and everything's certain, you don't have innovation. Some things need to be, like there's a fire alarm. Get out of the room now. There, go to those stairs. There's no discussion, no democracy, no creativity. However, there are times when, let's allow discussion. And this is the joy, the model that I borrow is sometimes the leader's job is to not know the answer, but to curate the question. Sometimes, just like the guy at Google, the areas I know, I've been here before, it's probably a technical problem we've seen before. I'll tell you the answer. I won't let you spend hours and days. But actually, here's a novel idea, which is a guy, Heifetz, from Harvard Business School. He talks about technical challenge and adaptive. Technical is there probably is an answer. We've seen it before. We can work it out. We can discuss it. We can rationalize it. We can spreadsheet it. Novel, adaptive, we haven't been here before. We have to adapt. We have to try it out. We don't know where we're going to end. We could actually, if we try to get the answer too quickly, we'll choke off possibilities. One way of thinking of that, this is convergent thinking versus divergent. Have you heard of this? Convergent is we're converging towards one answer. Divergent is, let's open it up. And there are times when you want to converge, get it done, budget, time, problems, get to one answer, let's solve it. Actually, there are times when you want to diverge, open it up. Why are we making widgets? What's the point of this? Could we do it in another way? Actually, maybe we need 3 people to do this rather than 30.
For leadership, or leadership and just the workforce, do you get a ton of pushback on this? Like when you come in and you're talking to companies, is it voodoo to them and they're just like, not so much? Do you have to sell into this? How does that go?
Well, most of my contacts are warm. So the person booking me kind of knows what I'm doing.
Right.
They may have to get some sign off from leadership development, HR, what's going on. You're going to make people tell jokes? No, it's not diverse, it's not equitable, it's not inclusive. No, I don't do jokes at anyone's expense other than my own, really. But also what I tend to do, and I'm a fan of provocative therapy, which was created by a man called Frank Farrelly in Madison, Wisconsin. But he, without going too deep, he said, we satirize people's self-limiting beliefs. We don't laugh at a person, we say, oh, right. We tease people back to mental health. Was his approach. However, what I do find is people, the boss, I've organized it. I've talked to the COO. We've kind of got it. They're going to come to the Comedy Store in London for a day. Okay. Some of them are a bit ginger. Some of them find I'm not well that day. Small number. And very quickly, I even have a microphone there, stand-up comedy mic. And then I say, we're not going to use it. And I take it off stage. We're going to do improv. This is not solo stand-up. Stand-up is hard. I'm terrified of stand-up. Stand-up, you've got to write jokes. You've got to be on your own. You've got to enter the lion's den naked. Improv, I'm doing it with my friends. I'm doing it as a team. The audience knows it's made up. I can say, that wasn't very good. I've got such cover. So I very quickly established it and also slowly entice them with the truth, which is improv started not with comedians, not with actors, but it started in Chicago in the 1920s with a social worker who was helping children, non-native speakers, deprived children, Central Chicago. She was trying to help them feel confident to speak up in class, just like we discussed. And it was her son who said, oh, those exercises could work as a form of theatre. So by 1959, Second City was started. And so it all came from, not from show-off comedians, but a social worker. Her son said, let's look at this. Del Close, one of the gurus of improv, said something like, don't try to write the scene on your own, as I talked about earlier. He said, bring a brick and together we'll build a cathedral. So the pushback I might get was, I don't want people to be like a rabbit in the headlights, made to stand up and do jokes. I said, it's not stand up, it's not jokes. In fact, if you try and do jokes in an improv scene, you will spoil the reality. Very often the joke is a yes but, not a yes and. It's at the expense of the reality. Will people feel, will they do jokes? And sometimes people do, men especially, got to do jokes. So they'll do jokes, they'll do off-color jokes.
They think they're funny.
They think they're funny, and very quickly, well, you did a joke, you weren't listening, you didn't accept the offer. And also, you made a sexist joke. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I mean,
you alienated.
I try and do it gently so as to not create too much of a temperature drop in the room. And people, either in a work environment, so they don't do terribly off-color things. They generally don't, because they're work people. Sometimes they're a bit nervous. And also, I model things. So I'm in a scene and I can't think of the word. What is it? Chauffeur. The driver person. And I model, without consciously doing so, not getting it right. I'm happy because I do the scenes with them initially and then they do it around the room. But I model falling over. I model tripping up. I don't know what to say, but I'll say whatever comes to my head. And I'll know if somebody wants to say poo, we can say poo. We're in a zoo. There's an elephant doing a poo. That's fine. So I create the environment that says this is not about comedy. You may have seen improv as a comedic technology, but it started with children. And at its truth, it's about storytelling. At its basis, it's about make the other person look good. At its heart, it's about listening. It's not about winning. It's about embracing our own vulnerability. That's the joy of it, which is a big journey for some people because they've seen people on stage doing funny. And also, frankly, some people don't know what improv is or stand-up. They think stand-up is somebody just talking stuff they've just thought of, not something's been road tested for 3 years and looks like conversational. Improv is ensemble, 2 or more people saying stuff based on audience suggestions for the first and last time that night.
So when I see it, this is all new to me. So this is all very new. And so what I think, when I think improv, I think of the show, Whose Line Was It Anyway? You ever see that show? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that was started in the UK. And the guy who created it is actually English, but he started in Chicago as a postgraduate, came back full of the gospel. So Whose Line Is It Anyway is funny, but it was many, many years in the making. They tried other improv shows, and improv on TV can just look like badly rehearsed sketches.
Right.
Poorly written, badly rehearsed sketches. What the clever thing that he did was have the audience in shot, have the host in the UK was Clive Anderson.
Are you getting ready to tell me this is scripted?
No.
No.
The complete
like you're going to
opposite.
ruin everything.
No.
What I will say about this.
What I will say was the clever thing is an improv scene on stage can last 8 minutes. On TV it would look long, so it might last 2 minutes on TV. So and that's the clever thing, having the Drew Carey or the Clive Anderson coming in, bzz, next thing. You up the tempo. Secondly, in the UK, certainly, probably in the States, they record an hour and a half, of which they show 28 minutes. So in the theatre, you see everything, warts and all, and that it's the original. You had to be there. Whose Line Is It Anyway is not cheating, but they realise that some scenes just don't quite work. They go on too long. You don't get to the point quickly enough. They are imperfect for that medium. On the theatre stage, the imperfections make the bits that work all the better. So I cut you off probably there, but Whose Line Is It Anyway looks like they're being clever. It's not Oscar Wilde clever. It's not Picasso clever. It's making it up on the fly clever. How did they do that? I can't believe they thought of anything. So Freud said that pleasure was the relief of pain. There's a lot of pain watching improv. It's much harder work because you're going, what would I say? You're filling in the gap.
Oh, yeah.
You are going, oh, please say something. And people say to me, what if you can't think of anything? And I say, that's often the best bit where you go, bleh.
Yeah.
Or you suddenly, something comes to you that you think, wow, I don't know where that came from. The gods of improv gave it to me. And you have the humility to say, my unconscious or our shared consciousness created something of which I seem to be the purveyor, but I couldn't claim credit for it.
I could talk to you all day, but turns out you like a job and family, all these other responsibilities.
Well, I need to go to bed. It's 10 p.m. here. I know for you youngsters across the water. It's...
No. We got a match coming up on Saturday. Hopefully, we'll see some things